I moved into Building 13 on a Saturday afternoon that looked like it had been forgotten by the sun. Gray clouds hung motionless in the sky, and a chill clung to the air despite the season. I had just finished my last semester of university and was desperate for something cheap, no matter the condition. That's what made Building 13 appealing. No deposit, no contract, no background check. Just come, they had said, and the room will be waiting. When I arrived, the lobby was oddly silent. The receptionist's desk sat under a broken fluorescent light that flickered above a bowl of rusting keys. There were no decorations, no other tenants passing by. Just a man in a pale gray coat behind the counter. He didn't ask for my ID, just handed me a key with a metal tag that read 6-4. Room 6-4, he said, his voice dry. It might stick a little. Just press and hold. 6-4, I echoed. Wait, there's a 13th floor here but no 4th. Isn't that backwards? He looked at me for a long moment. Not annoyed, just tired. There is no 4th, he said, and no 6th. Just the floor you're meant to find. I stared at him, waiting for a smirk. A punchline. Nothing. He turned and walked into the back room. The elevator was old, the kind with a metal accordion gate that clanked loudly when I pulled it shut. The panel was worn down, buttons rubbed blank, except a few that glowed weakly when pressed. I searched for the 6th floor but found something odd. The button that should have been 6 was labeled. It lit up when I pressed it. The elevator groaned, shuddered, then ascended. When the doors opened, I was greeted by a long hallway lined with dim yellow lights and scuffed wooden floors. The numbers on the doors made no sense, 13B, to C, 8D, and others scratched off entirely. But there was one door with nothing, just raw wood, peeling paint, and a bronze handle dulled with time. My key slid in like it had been there before. Clicked open without resistance. Room 6-4 was larger than I expected. Too large. The ceiling stretched nearly 2 stories. The living room had a single couch facing a wall with no television, just a cracked painting of a mountain at sunset. The kitchen looked into jet metallic, silent, and the windows faced brick. I walked to the glass and looked out. No alley, no city, just solid and moving brick. It was like the world had stopped existing once I entered this place. Then I noticed the photo. On the far wall hung a black and white picture of 5 people standing with their backs turned. Their silhouettes faded into mist. One figure, in the center, wore a hoodie identical to the one I had on, same frayed edge, same logo. I stepped closer, squinting. The stitching on the hoodie in the photo looked aged, older than mine, but unmistakably familiar. There was a desk in the corner. On it sat a notebook, leather bound, worn at the edges. I opened it. Inside, in precise handwriting, do not sleep before 3:15 a.m. And when you hear knocking, do not open the door. I laughed out loud, the sound bouncing off the tall walls and dying too quickly. A prank. Maybe someone before me left it. Maybe it was part of the atmosphere. Cheap thrills. I left the notebook and went to bed. But at exactly 3:17 a.m., I woke up to 3 knocks. Soft, measured, confident. I froze. No one knew I was here. The notebook fell from the desk on its own. It opened to the same page. Do not open the door. I locked every bolt, shoved a chair under the handle, and sat in the corner, eyes wide until morning. When sunlight finally touched the floor, I opened the door. There was no one there, but the doorknob was warm, and just below it a single smear of soot dragged across the floor and disappeared halfway down the hall. The next morning, I stayed in bed long after the sunlight reached the floor. There was something wrong with the silence here. It wasn't peaceful. It was heavy, as if every creak in the wall was holding its breath. I kept waiting for something to knock again. Nothing did, but I didn't feel alone. I stepped into the hallway to explore, half expecting to run into some alien, but there were no sounds of life. No murmurs through thin walls, no footsteps, no scent of morning coffee, just the stale odor of dust and wood. I knocked on a few doors, gently at first, then louder. No response. I leaned down to look under the doors. No light, no movement. It was as if the other apartments were just hollow shells. Like the idea of neighbors had been planted, but never followed through. I made my way down to the lobby. The front desk was deserted. The chair behind the counter sat pushed neatly in. No sign of the man who'd given me the key. No note. No ledger. The bowl of keys was gone. The glass doors were coated in a new layer of dust I didn't remember from the day before. I pressed my hand against the glass and looked out. The street was busy. Cars moved. People passed by. But no one looked up. No one looked at the building. And the sunlight hit everything but us. The entire structure cast no shadow. Back in the room, I found a mug sitting on the table. Ceramic. Cream-colored. Steam still curling from the top. I hadn't made tea. I walked into the kitchen, checked the kettle. It was cold. Dry. I stared at the mug for a long time before touching it. The handle was warm, as if someone had just let go. I carried it to the sink and poured it out. The liquid was clear, and it smelled like mint and something else. Something sour and old. That night, I couldn't stop pacing. I checked every corner, every cabinet, every crevice. I measured the windows. I tapped on the walls. They sounded wrong, hollow in some places, deep and dense in others. I opened every drawer. All were empty except one. It held a single photo. A Polaroid, slightly warped from moisture. It showed a version of the living room I was standing in, same couch, same painting, but there was someone sitting on the couch in the picture. Not me, but close. Someone wearing my clothes. Legs crossed, staring directly into the camera. The face was blurred. At 2:33 a.m., something changed. Not with a bang, not with light, with smell. A sudden wave of warmth, like someone had just stepped out of a hot shower. The scent was familiar: shampoo, steam, and the faint undertone of something sterile and metallic. I followed it into the bathroom. The mirror was fogged over. Even though I hadn't used hot water, I wiped it with my hand. The words beneath were smeared at first, then cleared into focus. We lived here once. Now it's your turn. I stepped back and caught movement in the corner of the mirror. A figure, just behind me. I spun around. Nothing, but the hallway light flickered. Once. The next morning, I noticed the photograph had changed. Only 4 people remained, and the person in the center, previously facing away, was now turning around. I leaned in close. The image wasn't blurry anymore. It was my face, but older. And it was smiling. I tried to tell myself it was sleep deprivation, that the photo hadn't changed, that my memory was playing tricks on me, that the smiling version of my face in the frame was just a coincidence, a trick of the light or of an overactive mind under too much pressure. But when I held the photograph under the kitchen light, the truth was undeniable. It was me, or a version of me. His skin was slightly paler, like he hadn't gone outside in years. His smile was wrong, not forced or fake, but unfamiliar. The way you smile at a stranger when you've read about them for years. A practiced grin, not out of joy but recognition. That morning, I found the door to the hallway ajar. I always locked it. Always. I checked the bolts. All 3 were still drawn, which meant the door had opened from the inside. I began writing things down. Times, sounds, changes, everything. 2:33 a.m. the room changes. 3:17 a.m. knocking. Morning, small objects out of place. Afternoon, strange warmth in the bathroom. Evening, the photo changes. I created categories: sensory, auditory, temporal, visual. I felt like a detective solving a case inside my own apartment. But the more I tracked, the more I realized something. The room was also keeping track of me. In the hallway across from my door was an apartment I hadn't noticed before. The number on it was worn away. Faded brass numbers had once been screwed into the wood, but now they were just ghostly imprints. And yet there was a slip of paper taped to the door. I stepped closer. Written in bold red ink. Please do not disturb Unit 6 to 4B. Tenant is not to be engaged. I stared at the paper for a long time. 6 4B. My key didn't say B. There had never been a B. I raised my hand to knock, but stopped. Something inside told me it would knock back. That night, I found footprints. Damp, bare footprints across the wood floor, leading from the kitchen into the living room. Too long, toes curled slightly, as if walking reluctantly. I followed them to the window, and that's when I saw it. Across the brick wall, one that supposedly bordered the building's exterior, there was a window, identical to mine. Same curtain, same dim light flickering behind it, and behind that curtain a silhouette of someone standing completely still, facing in my direction. I turned off the lights, sat in the dark, watched. They didn't move, but I swear the shadow smiled. At 3:17, the knock came again. Only this time, not at the door, from inside the closet. 3 slow, solid thuds. I grabbed the nearest object-me lamp and held it like a weapon. My hand trembled on the closet handle. I counted to 3, yanked it open. Darkness, just coats, and the smell of soil, fresh soil. The next day, I went to the landlord's office. I needed answers, but when I arrived it wasn't there. The desk was gone. The walls had been painted white. No signs of a tenant office. No bowl of keys. No man in a gray coat. Only a chair, facing the corner. And on that chair, a copy of the same notebook I'd found in my apartment. I opened it. A new entry had appeared, handwritten in the same sharp letters. Stop looking for the tenant. He never left. He just became the walls. I turned around to leave. And there, in the reflection of the glass doors, I saw him, standing just behind me. A reflection, with my face. Only this time he wasn't smiling. He was mouthing something. 2 words. My turn. I didn't sleep that night. After seeing the reflection mouth those words, my turn, something shifted. Not just in the apartment, but in me. The air was denser. The silence had an echo. And for the first time since moving in, I realized something terrifying. This place wasn't haunted. It was waiting. I moved through the apartment as slowly as possible, half expecting every door I opened to reveal another version of myself behind it. I checked the closet again, nothing but coats and that lingering smell of soil. I opened every drawer, even the ones that had been empty the day before. But one of them wasn't empty anymore. It held a single black and white photo. This time, it was a shot of me sleeping. Same clothes I was wearing, same blanket, same position I had curled into the previous night. But in the photo there was someone standing next to my bed. A blurry silhouette. Too tall, too still, too close. I flipped the photo over. No writing, but it smelled like the notebook dust and decay, with something sharp beneath it, like ozone before a lightning strike. I threw it out, took the trash down to the basement. The elevator stopped at a floor I hadn't pressed. The light blinked B2. There is no B2. The doors opened into a dark hallway with stone walls and old water stains. At the far end, one light flickered above a single door. No number. I stepped out. Every instinct told me not to, but I couldn't stop myself. The door opened on its own, and what I saw inside wasn't another room. It was my room. Perfectly recreated. Same couch. Same mug on the table. Same photograph. But this version of the apartment was decaying. The ceiling sagged. Mold spread from corners. The photo on the wall was torn in half. And on the couch sat him. Me. Slumped, pale, and moving. Eyes open but unblinking. When I stepped forward, the version of me on the couch turned its head mechanically, slowly, and grinned. "You found it," he said. "Now you don't get to leave." I ran. Out the door, down the hall, into the elevator. The lights flickered violently. Buttons blinked. I pressed everything. The doors shut. When they reopened, I was back on my floor. The hallway looked normal, but my door had a note taped to it now. In bold red, "This unit is now occupied." I locked it anyway. The room looked the same, untouched, except there was now a door in the far corner, one I had never seen before. The frame was slightly crooked. The handle rusted over. I stepped closer. It was cold, as if the wood had never known sunlight. I reached for the handle. Behind me, the lights dimmed, and from inside that door, I heard breathing. Heavy, labored, human, and then, whispering. "One of us always opens the door. The other never gets to close it." I backed away. But now the door is always there, even when I blink, even when I dream, especially when I dream. I tried ignoring the new door. I pushed a dresser in front of it, piled books against the base, hung a blanket over the frame. But no matter what I did, I could still hear it breathing, sometimes quietly, sometimes with a raspy, wet inhale like something trying to learn how lungs work. Other nights, it whispered my name, not out loud, but into my thoughts. "Mark, you left me behind." On the sixth night, the whispering changed. It no longer called for me. It started calling numbers. 12, 12, 12C. 13. There is no 13th floor. I've checked. The elevator skips from 12 to 14 like every other building, superstitious enough to avoid the number. But at 3:17 that night, the elevator light blinked. 13. Not 13th floor, just 13. The button glowed. I hadn't pressed anything. I stared for almost a minute, heart pounding. Then something shifted behind me. I turned it slowly to look at the door I'd blocked. The dresser had moved, just enough to see the handle. It turned once, slowly, without sound. I backed toward the elevator. The door slid open. Welcome or warning, he couldn't tell. I stepped inside, pressed no buttons. Still, the elevator moved. It stopped at 13. The doors opened to darkness. I stepped out onto a carpet that was wet, not soaked, just damp, like something had just passed through it. The hallway was lined with doors, but none had numbers. Instead, they each had names, all handwritten, and all of them were versions of my own name. Mark, Marcus, M, Langston, roommate, boy in photo, ghost. The last door simply read, me. The knob turned before I touched it. Inside was a room exactly like mine, but empty. And in the middle, a single chair, facing the door. On it, a figure, head bowed, arms tied, wearing my clothes. I stepped inside, light flickering behind me. The door shut on its own. The figure lifted his head slowly. It was me, but older. Eyes dull, lips cracked. "You took the elevator," he whispered. "Now you can't go back." I backed up. "No," I said, shaking. "This isn't real." He smiled, broken and even. "Neither are you." The walls around us began to breathe. The floor pulsed, like a heart. The chair rotted beneath him, legs snapping inward. He stood, and my vision blurred, like static washing across glass. He lunged. I hit the door, slammed it open, ran back into the hallway of names. Doors began slamming open one by one as I passed. Each room revealed another version of myself. Some screaming, some whispering, one just crying. I made it back to the elevator, pressed every button. The doors finally shut. The panel flickered, and instead of going down, it lit up 14, then 15, then infinity. I blacked out. I woke up back in my room. Everything the same, except now the photo on the wall had changed again. There were two of me in it, and one of them was watching the other sleep. The new door remains, but now it's slightly ajar, and I hear footsteps on the ceiling every night at 3:17.